Building a railroad is tough, hard work, and the Central Pacific had the difficult task of building a railroad up and over the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Chinese immigrants made up 90% of the workforce. They graded roads, bored tunnel through solid rock, laid track, and built bridges. They had to cut down trees and clear dense brush. They cut away land in some places and filled it in other places. And they did it all by hand because there were no steam shovels, power drills, or tunneling machines. Instead, they used picks and shovels, wheelbarrows, carts, and horses. The men worked 10 hours per day, 6 days per week. Work in the Sierra was the toughest of all because of how brutal the Sierra winters were. The winter of 1866-1867 brought more than 40 snowstorms. 40! The snow was so deep, the men working up there built snow tunnels to get around in, but they kept working. The railroad ran 24-hour shifts with Chinese workers chipping and blasting away at the solid granite rock. The railroad hired more than 10,000 Chinese men to do this work. Have you ever tried to break a rock? If you have, you know it's a really difficult thing to do. Well, imagine chipping away at a mountain built of rock and building a tunnel big enough for a train to get through. From 1865 to 1867, Chinese railroad workers built 15 tunnels. The most difficult was tunnel number 6, or Summit Tunnel. This tunnel was 1,695 feet long. That's almost 5 football fields lined up end to end. The Chinese worked day and night. Using a star drill, something similar to this, one man would hold it in place while another pounded it with a big, heavy hammer. And when he hit it with the hammer, the other man would turn it a quarter turn. Hammer, turn, hammer, turn, hammer, turn, all day until they made a hole that was about 2.5 feet deep. When they had several of these holes, they put in black blasting powder, and then they packed it with straw and mud and lit a fuse. Boom! It blasted away the rock, and the workers would carry away the rocks in baskets and wheelbarrows. Day after day after day after day they did this. Now, what do you think it would be like to work in a tunnel like that? It'd be cold, it would be dark, and very loud as you blasted deeper and deeper into the mountain. Your supervisor would be yelling at you to work harder, and the air would be so dusty and confined that it would be very hard to breathe. It was very difficult work. Many of the men died in blasting accidents or in avalanches in the mountains, but the Chinese continued to work hard, and they finished the tunnels in the summer of 1868. By the way, the snow was so bad the Central Pacific built 37 miles of snow sheds, like the one that we have here in the museum. Some people call that the longest barn in the world. Well, for all this work, the railroad paid Chinese workers less than white workers. By June of 1867, Chinese earned about $35 a month, which equals out to about $600 in today's dollars. White workers made more, plus the railroad paid for their food and lodging. Chinese workers wanted $40 a month and to work 8 hours a day instead of 10. When the railroad refused, 5,000 workers went on strike. It was the largest strike of its time. This was very bad timing for the Central Pacific because they had a very strict time schedule to meet. Time was money, and the more tracks they built, the more money they made. Still, they refused to pay the Chinese what they asked for, and they cut off their food supply. After a week without food, the Chinese went back to work without the raise in pay that they had demanded. But they made their point. They stood up for themselves, and it was a sign of their collective strength. The Chinese proved to be very hardworking and dependable. They had to deal with extreme prejudice from other white workers and from supervisors. But they eventually earned the respect of Stanford, Huntington, Crocker, and Hopkins, the Big Four, who could not have built the railroad without them.